Spent the night with my boss after a fight with my hubby. Then my boss did this. This is crazy. I've never been this confused and scared in my entire life. I'm literally in a state where I don't even know what to do. I got myself into a big mess and I really don't know how to fix this. My marriage is at stake here and everything is crumbling right in front of me. I cheated on my husband with my boss at a corporate party. I don't even want to start by putting the blame on alcohol. Yes, we both had drinks, but it wasn't much that could make us drunk and not have control over ourselves. I was the one that cheated, but it's my husband that's getting threatened by my affair partner. I feel ashamed and disgusted right now. Apparently, my boss is threatening my husband not to divorce me because of my infidelity with him. His threats are very intimidating, and I feel so scared for my husband. He is a good man, and he doesn't deserve to be treated that way. To make matters even worse, my husband is not even intimidated by all these threats. Right now, we're not living under the same roof. I had to run away because the house was becoming too heated and sophisticated for me. One more day with Justin is like living with the devil. He isn't the man I knew, or rather the man I thought he was. He has turned into a ruthless psycho that is not ready to spare anyone that dares to offend him. To say that I'm in a very big problem is an understatement. I'm currently in a dilapidated state. My life is falling apart, guys. Before I continue, I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Pia. I'm 25 years old. The name of my husband is Justin. He is 29 years old. Justin and I have been together for the past 3 years. But as it seems now, we're currently going through a divorce. I regret everything so much that I wish there is a way I could fix this. I allowed myself to be carried away by the feeling of the moment. Justin, my husband, is a very nice and caring man. He didn't deserve this, and I just hope he can have mercy on me. My husband and I met a few years ago, and we were so much in love. I didn't really know what actually happened, but I fell out of love with him 2 years after we got married. Despite his gentle and soft-hearted nature, I still cheated on him. Justin is really a caring man, and he didn't deserve what I did. I didn't only cheat on him, he also got threatened by my affair partner. I know you all would actually blame me and say nasty things, but it's fine, I'm ready for anything. Ned! So guys, like I said earlier, things started falling out of place between me and my husband, Justin. I didn't know when it got to that point, but it was not intentional. Sometimes I do get pissed by some of the kind attitude he displays. No, guys, don't get me wrong. He didn't actually do anything bad. If at all he did, it wasn't something that could make anyone be that mad for long. The most annoying part of it is that any woman that was to be in my position wouldn't see it as a big deal because of the kind of person my husband is. But I find a lot of fault with anything he did. This happens when you no longer feel the same way with your partner like you did at the beginning of your love story. Though Justin and I's relationship wasn't a love story, but it was something that was beautiful at the beginning, but here we're now. I no longer feel like it anymore. Don't worry, guys, I will tell you all how it all started. Everything started when I got employed at my workplace. I work as a secretary at a company. After Justin and I got married, I struggled to get a job. Feeding or clothing wasn't a problem to me because my husband provided everything. He didn't buy the idea of me working. So long he was working and was earning well, he didn't see the need for me to get a job. But I didn't want to be idle or something. I needed to make something with my life. During those times I didn't have a job, I was not nagging or taking it out on Justin. He helped me seek a job. It was all thanks to him that I got this job. But I won't bore you all about how that happened and how I got the job. Moving on, guys, after what seemed like forever to get a job, I finally got one. I was so excited that I was finally going to work. Justin supported me during those moments. However, things started to change a few months later after I started working. Well, to me, actually, I don't know about my husband. What changed for me was the overwhelming nature of the job. Maybe it was because I was employed as a secretary. I did most of the job assigned to me, and I was commended by my boss on several occasions. My boss's name is Martins. He is the CEO of the company I worked for. Sometimes Martins do propose to treat me to either lunch or dinner for a job well done, but I often decline the offer. At that time, I wasn't ready to start going out with my boss or to even be seen with him in public outside the workplace. I didn't want my coworkers to have the impression of me dating the boss. There were several occasions where Martins complimented my dressings. Sometimes he purposely gave me work so as to stay late at the office with him. He made several advances to me, but I didn't have any at all. I made it clear to him about my marital status, but he wasn't buying it. Rather, he told me that there wasn't anything wrong if I went on a date with him. Despite his sweet talking, I didn't mind all that he said. I was focused on doing my job and at the same time ignoring Martins. So guys, there was a day we all were summoned into the boardroom by the boss. It was 5 minutes long. Martins called to let us know about an event that was going to happen about a week from then. He told us to look our best and strictly warned us not to disappoint him because the party was unusual. We all left the room and everyone went back to continue all what they were doing. I got home that day and told Justin about the party, and he didn't stop me from going. Rather told me to be careful, which I assured him I would. So guys, the day of the party, Justin and I got into a heated argument. Apparently he got home late the previous night and kept me worried. When I tried talking to him, he didn't say much and he walked away. I still insisted and followed him upstairs. It was there we got into a quarrel. I was so angry that I didn't talk to him throughout that day. The next day was the party. It was scheduled at 4 p.m. that day. We had the day off and didn't go to work. That time, Justin and I were still giving each other our attitudes. When it was time for the party, I got dressed and left. The location of the party was a little bit far from the house. I boarded a cab because I didn't want to drive when going back. The party was a corporate one. You needed an invitation before you could get in. I had taken my invite along with me so as to avoid any embarrassment. When I got there, I was asked to show it before they allowed me in. I got in and everywhere was looking beautiful. Honestly, guys, I haven't been to that kind of gathering before then. But to my coworkers, it was their 5th time because they do come there on several occasions. While I was busy admiring the whole place, I got a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see who it was. Guys, it was Martins, my boss. Martins appeared handsomely dressed. I quickly distracted myself from admiring him so it wouldn't notice. Martins, as usual, complimented my dressing. I smiled and also complimented his dressing. Martins then held my hands and asked me to follow him. We walked up to a couple of people and we changed pleasantries. Not long after, everyone in the party was gathered. The host gave out a speech and everyone clicked glasses afterwards. I won't lie, guys, I really enjoyed myself at the party. The party was to end at 10 p.m. that day, but I ended up going home by 12 a.m. because I wanted to avoid Justin. I planned on getting home that day after I must have slept off. So guys, I was enjoying myself at the party. I took about 2 shots to forget about what had happened between me and Justin. Just when I was about to take the 3rd one, Martins held my hand and told me to stop. I got so angry and I tried dragging my hand from his grip, but then what Martins did next left me surprised. Guess what, guys? Martins pulled me over and kissed me. Yes, guys, he kissed me. We were like that before Martins pulled over. At that point, I was confused as to why he did that. Honestly, I also wanted to kiss him the moment I met him at the party. Martins then held my hands to a room and we spent a few hours together. It was 11:30 p.m. when I woke up. By that time, Martins was not on the bed, he was in the bathroom. A few minutes later, he came out and I felt a little bit ashamed, but Martins told me that everything was okay. We got out of the room and went back to where we had left everybody. But to our greatest surprise, a few people were around and it was the decorators. Everyone must have left early though. So guys, Martins and I then left the hall. Martins dropped me off at my neighborhood before he drove off. I got inside and met Justin fast asleep. Looking at Justin, I felt a bit of guilt because I had just cheated on him with my boss. But then again, I remembered what had happened between me and Martins and it brightened my mood. That made me forget about the argument Justin and I had. I went to the bathroom and freshened up before I joined Justin on the bed. For a few minutes, I found it hard to sleep because I was just thinking about Martins. I thought of how I was going to face him at the office after all what had happened at the party. I became scared and anxious at the same time. A lot of thoughts came to my mind that I was asking myself if after everything he fired me or reported it to my husband. I was in that thought when my phone beeped. It was a text message. I wondered who it was at that time of the night. I took my phone and checked. Guys, it was from Martins. He texted to wish me a good night with a love emoji. Seeing that made me feel better. That confirmed to me that he wasn't all what I was thinking at that moment. I quickly texted back and dropped my phone and slept off. The next day was a Saturday morning. I got up and did the house chores and resumed back to the work I had brought home the previous days to do before the party. Justin also went to hang out with his friends around the neighborhood. I was all left at home that morning. A few hours into my work, Martins called me to check on me. We spoke for a while before he asked me to come meet him at a place not too far from the office. I parked all what I was doing and quickly got dressed and headed out of the house. I tried calling Justin to tell him I was leaving the house, but his lines were switched off. Of course, I wasn't going to tell him that I'm going to hang out with my boss. No, guys, not at all. Just wanted to let him know that I was heading out, but that didn't work out because I wasn't able to reach him. Since he wasn't reachable, I didn't waste too much time before leaving. I got into my car and drove to the address Martins had texted me. It was a 30-minute ride and I got there on time. So guys, when I got there, I called Martins to inform him about my arrival. He then asked me to follow a route that led to a beach. Apparently, Martins wanted us to hang out together on a beach. He planned everything out well. Martins knew that none of his workers could locate this place so easily. That was why he asked me to come here. He knew I wouldn't be comfortable if any of the workers saw us together. I really liked the idea, and I was very happy that he thought about me before choosing the location. The atmosphere was cozy and warm. I loved the sound of the waters. There was background country music, and everywhere was lively. Martins left and went to get us something to eat. I took that opportunity to go into the waters. The feeling was mesmerizing, guys. It was a place that's good to clear one's head if overwhelmed with work or life issues. Not long after, Martins yelled my name and asked me to come over to where he was. He had gotten a good spot for us to stay and listen to the sound of the waters. We sat down and talked about a couple of things. Martins told me about some secrets he hadn't told anyone and also why he was single. Well, according to him, he wasn't ready to settle down prior to that time. We talked about a few things, went into the waters to have some fun, and then we got back home afterwards. I really enjoyed myself that day, and I hope to do that with him during that time. I went home that day and met Justin at home. He had returned a few hours before I got back. After the usual cordial greetings, I went upstairs to freshen up. Not long after I came out and went down, I met Justin going through my phone. I was surprised as to why he was doing that. I asked him to give me back my phone, but he refused and told me not to take any step further. Justin went through my chats and text messages with my boss. He got so angry and threw my phone to the wall. He pulled me closer and yelled at me. Justin's eyes were burning like fire. I got so scared and tried to pull away, but he twisted my arms and made sure it hurt me so bad. Justin left home that day and didn't say where he was going. I was in pain due to the way he twisted my arms. I thought of what had just happened and I took my phone to tell Martins that my husband had gotten to know about us. I was really scared of what Justin was going to do the next day. I tried calling him, but his lines were switched off. The next day, I still couldn't reach out to Justin. I was scared, and so I went over to my boss's place. My boss is an influential person. Apparently, my boss and Justin's boss are friends, or rather, were childhood friends. When the matter escalated, I went over to see my boss and told him about Justin's decision to divorce me. That day, my boss assured me he was going to do something about it and not to bother myself. At that moment, I felt a little relieved and hoped that everything was going to be okay. I left my boss's office and went back home. When I got home, I saw Justin's car parked outside. I was scared at first, but I decided to go inside to have a conversation with him. It had been 3 days since he left home after the incident. Guys, I got inside and met Justin seated on the couch. Right in front of him was a divorce papers. I went closer to where he was seated and knelt down in front of him. I bursted into tears and cried, telling him how sorry I was. For like 15 minutes, Justin kept silent and didn't utter anything to me. I didn't stand up either. I was still there hoping he could have a change of mind. Just before I could say anything, Justin stood up and went upstairs. He snubbed me and did as if no one was talking. My husband spent another 15 minutes there. I didn't really understand what he was doing, and I couldn't go there to see it because I was so scared. Guys, you all wouldn't believe what he did next. My husband came out of the room and stood at the balcony upstairs and threw my things down to the sitting room. He messed up my things and even broke some valuables. All our pictures together, Justin threw them out all. I ran from where I was because I didn't want to get hurt. Justin didn't even show any sign of concern. When he was done throwing my things out, he yelled from the balcony to leave his house and take the divorce papers along. I started pleading and told him how sorry I was, but Justin wasn't buying any of that. My husband told me that he gave me 50 seconds to leave his house and didn't want to see me when he came out again. I knew the content of that order. He didn't stutter when he said it. I knew I would be the one to regret it at the end of the day. So guys, I quickly parked all my things and left before he could come outside again. Of course, I didn't take the divorce papers. I had hoped that he was going to change his mind, and also I remembered what my boss told me and I keyed into that. When I left the house, I called a friend of mine and asked if I could hang around for a while. Her name is Tina. She was one of my high school mates. Tina accepted me and told me that I could stay as long as I want. I didn't plan on staying that long though. I just needed a place to stay for a while to search for everything. I didn't want to inconvenience her. So guys, the next morning I called my boss and told him everything that happened the previous day. Martins asked for us to see at our usual spot, which was a nearby coffee shop not too far from the office. Since my infidelity with my boss came out, I haven't been to work. In fact, my boss gave me a full week to settle everything with my husband and told me to resume anytime I wanted. That was his little way of trying to help me out. I got dressed that morning and went to the coffee shop and waited for him. It took Martin's like an hour before he came. I was so pissed off and mad. At that moment, I was under a lot of pressure. Only I understood what I was going through then. To say that everything overwhelmed me then is an understatement. When Martins came, he saw how I looked and he nodded his self-pity. He was surprised to see me that way. He didn't know the gravity of things then and how overwhelming it was for me. During those times, I was gradually losing my mind. I narrated everything to Martins all over again and bursted into tears. I cried bitterly and told him how badly I want to get back with my husband. Martins held my hands and told me not to cry anymore, that he knew what exactly to do. At that moment, Martins asked me what job my husband does and the name of his workplace. Hearing that from him, I got angry and asked him if that was going to solve the problem. I got so pissed that everyone at the coffee shop started staring at us. I literally pulled out a scene and those that were interested to listen were staring. Martins calmed me down and told me to trust him. He also asked me to tell him where exactly he needed to go. At that moment, I honestly didn't understand what he was up to, but I gave him the details anyway. Martins looked surprised and asked me to say the name of the place again, and asked if it was the right address. I looked at him with anger and told him why wouldn't I know where my husband works or the kind of job he does. Apparently, during the times Martins and I got so close, I didn't disclose anything about my husband. He knew I was married but didn't know Justin. So seeing my boss surprised about where Justin works was something that I was a little bit confused about. I didn't understand what was going on. Just when I wanted to ask if there was any problem, Martins pulled out his phone and called someone, asking if the person on the other end of the call was in the office. Martins quickly hung up and asked that we leave immediately. I was confused and didn't know what was happening at that time. Immediately, I asked Martin what happened and why we were leaving so soon, but he didn't give me any answer. Rather, he held my hand and pulled me from the coffee shop. We got into the car and we drove off to God knows where. During the ride, I kept asking where we were going, but Martins was silent all through. He didn't utter anything or give me any clue of what he was up to. A few minutes later, we got to a place and he parked. It was a 15-minute ride, not too far from the coffee shop. He asked me to come down from the car and follow him. Since he didn't say anything to me throughout the ride, I sat down and didn't make an attempt to stand up. Martins looked at me and then told me to trust him. He got down from the car and went to the front door and opened it for me. I let out a loud hiss and came down from the car. Honestly speaking, guys, I didn't know the place Martins had brought me. All I was thinking at that moment was about my husband. I followed Martins and we got into a compound. The house was so big and orderly decorated. Only a rich man could own this kind of place, I thought to myself. We got inside and we were asked to wait at the visitor's room. A few minutes later, the person we had come to see came out. Mainly looking at the person, I knew I had seen him somewhere but couldn't remember immediately. I kept staring at him until he got seated. I watched him and Martins exchange pleasantries. I was only able to say hi because I was trying to remember the face. The person knew I was not settled and asked if everything was okay. It was then I asked him if we had met before. He bursted into laughter and said that I didn't remember him. I didn't know what to say when he introduced himself. It was then I remembered who he was. Guys, you all wouldn't believe this. He was my husband's boss, Harry. Honestly, guys, I didn't know that my boss and Justin's boss knew each other. It was right there I knew that they were childhood friends. I was so shocked and surprised at the same time. The only time I met my husband's boss was when I went to see my husband at his office. That was when we got married. That was the first and only time that I had encountered Harry. Seeing him again with another man other than my husband made me a little bit ashamed. I felt a sense of guilt and shamefulness. My boss then told Harry everything that happened. Harry didn't seem surprised and he told me not to bother myself because he would make sure my husband and I will get back together. I asked him how that was going to be possible, but he didn't give me any answer. He just told me to go home and relax. My boss Martins also assured him at that moment. He told me they were going to take care of things. I honestly didn't know what they were up to, and I pleaded with them not to harm Justin. They looked at me and laughed. Harry said no one was going to get hurt and nothing would happen. After a few minutes later, Martins proposed we head back home. We left Harry's place and he dropped me at Tina's place. I told him about Tina and how she offered to help me to stay with her. Martins nodded and told me it was a good idea and he came closer and stretched his arms to give me a hug. I declined and told him I wasn't interested. After all, it was because of him that I was in this mess in the first place. I banged the door and left. I was so angry at that moment, and hugging Martin's was the last thing I needed. I just wanted to get back with my husband so badly. I messed up and I wanted to clean up my mess. A few days went by and I didn't hear anything from Martin's or Harry. The waiting also contributed to the pressure. I couldn't even eat anything during that period. Most of the time, Tina had to force me to eat something so as to not fall sick. How would I have been able to eat when I just got sent out of my matrimonial home? My parents would literally kill me if I dared to show up at their house. No responsible parent would advise or support their daughter or sons to cheat on their partners. I've been getting a lot of calls and text messages from my parents, but I'm not ready to return any because I already know what they want to say. I just wanted to settle everything and get back with Justin. 4 days of not getting any feedback from Martin's, I decided to go pay him a visit. The process was taking too long and nothing was happening. I got dressed that morning to go see Martin's. Just when I was about to leave, I got a text message from my husband. I was happy to get a message from him. I thought maybe he wanted to talk to me or tell me to come back home, but I got the opposite of it. Guys, Justin sent me a long message. The content of the message was not appeasing at all. In the text, Justin narrated how his boss threatened to have him fired if he went ahead to divorce me. He also told me how my boss, Martin's, sent some men to come over to the house to beat him up. Rather, he was the one that later taught them a big lesson. He also told me that he would not spare any of them if they tried what they did. Justin did tell me to show my boss and his boss the text he had just sent and would be waiting for them again. Not only that, guys, Justin also told me that he was ready and up to the task for anything. He told me that he had made his decision and no one can change it, not even his boss. To crown it all, Justin called me a shameless woman and called me all manner of names. It was then I realized that Justin was dare serious in having a divorce. I didn't read everything in the text message before a call came in. It was my husband, Justin. I picked the call and started telling him that I knew nothing about the threat. In Justin's mind, I was the one that told Martin's about it. My husband got to know about Martin's and Harry's friendship. He had thought maybe I had planned everything. I tried explaining it to him, but he didn't care to listen. Apparently, he called to ask if I have received the text and also called to tell me about the divorce papers. Justin didn't know where I was living at that time. He didn't care to know, and I didn't expect him to. Since he didn't know my exact location, he sent the divorce papers to the family lawyer to give it to me and have it signed within 2 weeks. At that moment, I was shattered. My marriage crumbled right in front of me. I knew that there was nothing left again. It didn't take Justin a second before he signed the divorce papers. Same way I didn't think about it before I cheated on him with my boss at the corporate party. Before I could say anything to my husband, he hung the call on me. I tried calling it back, but he kept on rejecting the call. After some time, he had it switched off, and then a few days later, Justin blocked my lines, and also blocked me on all social media platforms. After what happened that morning, I couldn't go to Martin's place again. I locked myself inside and cried my eyes out. I made a terrible mistake by cheating on my husband with my boss. My husband turned a cold shoulder towards me and cared less about me. And now he wants to divorce. Guys, I would like you all to tell me what to do about this. Right now, I really need your advice, please. I would be under the comments section. Update. Hi, guys. The last time I asked you all to give me advice on what to do about my husband and I planning on getting a divorce. Well, I'm here to complete my story, and I hope you all would learn something from this. I've read all the messages and opinion advice you all are giving, and honestly, guys, I appreciate them all. I deserve most of the hateful comments, and I truly regret my actions. Hi. So, guys, all efforts to have my husband change his mind went in vain. Right now, as I'm writing this, I'm currently a divorcee. My husband and I have gone our separate ways. My husband developed a strong hatred for me after learning about my infidelity. He doesn't want to see me or have anything to do with me. To make sure that his cruel revenge was well complete, he started dating one of his longtime friends from high school. I won't lie, guys. That part really got me hard. I was so pissed and upset that I didn't know what to do. What I did to my husband was unspeakable, and no man in his right senses would take in his unfaithful wife. My case was different. I didn't cheat on him in that corporate party alone. I also did it secretly and went on several dates with my boss. That was what angered Justin the most. He was so disappointed in me. My husband, whom I thought was a very gentle man, turned into a ruthless psycho. Since I knew him and that we have been married to each other, I haven't seen that ruthless side of him. Guys, y'all need to see it. During our divorce process, we had little contact. Justin looked at me with scorn. It was as if I woke up the beast in him. I couldn't muster the courage to even look at him twice. His eyes were burning as if it was on fire. It was during those times that I knew that I had messed up big time. I turned a gentleman into a ruthless psycho. My husband didn't even want to listen to anything that I had to say. The most important thing was that I cheated on him. Guys, despite the threats that my boss was giving to my husband, Justin didn't relent. He still went ahead to divorce me. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not in support of him getting threatened, no. I thought maybe he would have a change of mind, but he didn't. When my boss threatened him that he was going to lose his job if he dared divorce me, Justin wasn't moved at all. Guess what he did? He went to his workplace and gave his boss his resignation letter. Yes, guys, Justin quitted his job. According to him, he would rather quit the job than to take me back. He was done having anything to do with me and didn't want to see me again in his house. So guys, that was how everything turned out. Justin's mind was made up and there was nothing I could do to change it. I noticed that I was gradually losing my mind and I wanted to take care of myself. And so I signed the divorce papers and sent it back to him. I also moved out from Tina's place because she was also trying to find her feet. It's easy living alone and I didn't want to inconvenience her. I got a small apartment and moved in immediately after the divorce. I will be staying here until I finally find something to do. I know you all would be wondering what happened between me and Martin's, right? Well, after the divorce, I went over to his house and asked if I could move in. Martin's bluntly refused and told me to ever call him or look for him again because he doesn't want to have anything to do with me. He had had his fun and there's nothing exciting about me again. He banged the door on me and I left shamelessly. That day I went home and made up my mind to move out from Tina's place. Tina was supportive. She didn't want to leave, but I insisted on moving out. So guys, this is me now. It's been 2 weeks since I have been staying on my own. It isn't really easy here, but I will find my way. Justin has moved on with another lady and they are having their best time in another country. I'm not stalking him. In fact, I wish him the best. This is my story, guys. I hope you all have learned something from this. I have also learned my lesson, and I think life taught me a very big lesson.
I'm pregnant and I'm homeless. I don't know if that's an ideal situation to find oneself in, but I guess I'm reaping the consequences of my actions. I've never hated a person like I hate my ex-boyfriend's close friend and his colleague. They are evil and I blame them too. It never gets easy and it never just goes away. I cheated on my boyfriend who was planning to propose with his close friend and then he found out and threw me out of his house. I'm heartbroken and confused because I know that I caused everything. I knew a day like this would come when he would finally find out the truth, but I had no idea that the day had been coming sooner than expected. My name is Leah, and I'm a 25 years old personal shopper and fashion designer. Many people do not cease to tell me that they feel like I don't actually have a real job, but it's all good. I love what I do because it gives me peace of mind. Now that I'm in this situation, I can't help but depend on what I do to get me back on my feet. The name of my ex-boyfriend is Samson, and he's 27 years old, and he's a medical laboratory scientist. Samson and I met just 2 years ago at a mutual friend's party. It was the first time we had seen each other in years, and we really wanted to get to know each other. I couldn't even believe that we had mutual friends, yet we never had the opportunity to meet. I was 23 years old back then, but I was already done with college and had been looking for a job. I also had a boyfriend back then, but it was just a fling, and I didn't really take him serious because he was the lazy type. I've always been someone that is very interested in men that have a plan for their future and have something they planned their finances for. I don't like lazy men who think it's better to feed off whatever they earned. I know I might get roasted in the comment section for the statement, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, one of the reasons I was very attracted to Samson was the fact that he was a medical laboratory scientist and had other side businesses. I was attracted to his hardworking nature, and the fact that he was intelligent just added to the list. I was extremely happy when I was told that he wanted to get my number. We has been staring at each other throughout the party, but none of us made the first move, so when I got to know from my friend that he wanted to speak to me and have my phone number, I was really excited. I walked up to him and then we started talking. He was very nice, but he was not the type of guy to say cheesy and corny stuffs. He kept his words very respectful, and he was also smart in the way you spoke. I got attracted to that and we began talking for weeks. We finally hooked up and started dating, and that was the start of our relationship. 1 year later, I moved in with him because he suggested, and I did not refuse because I did not see anything wrong with it. He was my boyfriend, and I did not think it was wrong for me to move in with him. When I moved in with him, It was a very nice experience because she provided everything I needed and made sure I was very comfortable. It felt like I was even living in a hotel because of the amount of care that I got from him in his house. I really appreciated that, and it made me more excited to live with him. Like I said earlier, I was dating a medical laboratory scientist. Even though we've broken up, it's something I would never be afraid to brag about because Samson is very intelligent and hardworking and he deserves all the accolades he can get. At first, I did not think he was the type of guy that would respect a woman and even be in a long-time relationship. To be honest, I was insecure in the relationship at first because I'd not been in many long-lasting relationships before. Even though he didn't do anything that will make me raise my eyebrows, I always felt like it was not end up being a long-lasting thing. But he proved me wrong, and when we reached the 1-year mark, I was really excited for what the future held because I loved him a lot. When we moved in together, I became very positive and I actually believed that we were going to end up getting married. Like I said, he is a medical laboratory scientist, and that means that he earned a lot. He has a very beautiful house, and he doesn't really lack money because he has a lot of side businesses. And that's why I believe that he would be the type that didn't have a problem with getting married at any point in time. To me, I had found my dream guy, and I was very skeptical about letting that slip off my finger. It was not just about the money, it was the fact that he was the first man that actually took me serious and didn't try to play games. I didn't want to lose in, and I think that's the problem, and that's why I ended up losing him in the end. It's not good to always think about a particular thing and let your mind stay focused on that thing, especially when it's a negative thing, because at the end of the day, what you think about most is likely to happen, I guess. So I know that the beginning of this has made you all just wonder what could have made me cheat on him when I'm praising him. Well, even I want to ask myself that question because I'm very ashamed, but I know the truth, and that's so I want to let you or not. For the first 3 months of living with him, I got really insecure, and that was thanks to one of his female friends I met at a party. She actually talked down on me when she was told that I was his girlfriend. Of course, she did not see the nasty things in front of him. He invited me to a birthday party that happened to be for his sister, and his colleagues were also present because his sister also worked in the same place as him. When we got the party, I instantly knew that I would be very uncomfortable because most of the people that present were people I didn't recognize at all. Samson has always been someone to keep his personal and work like private, and it's something he always told me. He never saw the need to introduce me to his colleagues, and I never saw the need to introduce him to my colleagues, because he told me he didn't like mixing his personal life. It is work life because things could get messy. I didn't understand what he said before, and I just brushed it off because it was not an important thing for me. But now, I have realized that he was just trying to protect his relationship, and I have gone ahead to make one of his biggest fears come true. I didn't meet his closest friend until that party, and he never bothered to introduce the both of us. One time, I even offered to introduce my friends to him, but he refused and said they were not an important part of our relationship, and we didn't need to introduce each other to our friends because there was not a need for that. So at the party, most of the people present were his colleagues, his friends, and even his schoolmates. His sister and I were cordial, and we were still getting to know each other at that point, but we were definitely not enemies, and we hanged out once in a while. When she saw me, she got really excited, and that's when she told me she was really happy I could make it. Samson had gone to have a conversation with his friends, so I was alone, and she offered to introduce me to her colleagues. Just like I told you all earlier, Samson and his sister work at the same place, so they literally have the same colleagues. They are both medical laboratory scientists. It's safe to say that it's a family business because even their junior brother is in college right now studying a medical course. So let me get back to what I was telling you guys. She pulled me to go meet her colleagues, and that's when I met the rude girl called Layla. She isn't even someone I would pay attention to on a normal day, because I'm not the type of person to have anything to do with rude people who felt the need to put other people down on a daily basis. But because she was Christina's colleague, Samson's sister, I had no choice but to meet someone like her. Everyone else was nice, and they all seemed to be intrigued by the fact that I was Samson's girlfriend. They knew he had a girlfriend, but I didn't really know who she was because he never introduced her to them. Among the people I met was also Samson's closest friend, Mason. He's not a medical laboratory scientist, but he's a banker. He was one of the nicest people there because he told me it was his responsibility to make his closest friend's girlfriend feel welcome. But Layla was the perfect definition of a bitter lady with so much life problems that should felt the need to project her bitter nature to other people. She was so rude, and she had an attitude, and even though I tried not to pay attention to her, I noticed our attitude from the moment I was introduced as Samson's girlfriend. I don't even know why she had a big problem with that or why she thought it was any of her business who he dated. Even though I noticed that she was being rude and trying to make me feel uncomfortable, I didn't say anything about that or react because I knew that it was just a few minutes of conversation and I would not have to have her in my personal space. But I realized I was very long for thinking that after she cornered me in the bathroom. I had excused myself from the gathering because I needed to go use the bathroom. I had been in my monthly period by that time, and so I got uncomfortable really fast and needed to take a few bathroom breaks. Samson had told me not to come because he was aware of how uncomfortable I could get during my periods, but I wanted to come and support his sister, and that's why I came. When I was done and just wanted to leave the bathroom, Layla suddenly appeared and told me she had something very important she wanted to say to me. I knew it was a big red flag, that she couldn't say what she wanted to say in front of everyone else, and had to come see me into bathroom to say it. But I didn't want to act like I was scared of her and just walk away. I'm sure my fellow Redditors can back me up on this one, especially my fellow Redditors, because we all know that when another female tries to act like a rude brat, it's always best not to walk away without showing them that you can also be rude if you wanted to. So when I asked her what was so important that she could not say it in front of everyone else, she told me to get off my high horse and stop acting high and mighty. I was surprised because I never saw that coming, and I didn't get how what she said had anything to do in context to anything that had happened in the party. She told me that I was just a fashion designer who was still struggling and that I was lucky to even date Samson in the first place. She said I should cherish the little moment I had with him, because she could bet with her life that he would leave me too, now or later, for someone more intelligent than a struggling fashion designer like me. According to her, I was just too cheap and unintelligent to be dating a medical laboratory scientist. I was shocked to say the least because I didn't expect his colleague to say something like that to me once, when I'd just met her for the first time, and I did not do anything to warrant such a reaction. She told me that it was only intelligent women like her who were in the same line of work with him that deserved to date him. After giving her a piece of my mind, which was not really a very peaceful piece, I left the bathroom and went back to the party. That's when Mason spotted me and decided to have a conversation with me. He asked me what I was doing at the party alone, and I told him that Samson had gone to have a conversation with some of his friends. That's when he asked me if I would like to hear some stories about him and Samson. According to him, he wanted to let me know more about my boyfriend by telling me some embarrassing stories about of them. Of course, I got excited and really wanted to know what he wanted to say, and that's why I decided to follow him to the balcony and listen to what he wanted to say. But now I know that was a wrong mistake because missing is the perfect definition of a flirt and tease. Instead of actually talking about the childhood stories he said he would talk about, he just kept talking about himself and how he was hardworking and this and that. I actually got tired when I realized that he made no move to actually talk about Samson. So I excused myself and went back to the party. When Samson spotted me, he asked me where I had been because he had been looking for me, and I told him that I met up with his close friend, and he wanted to talk about their childhood stories, but I decided to look for him first. Samson was surprised that I got to meet Mason, and he asked me how I was able to meet up with him. I told him that it was a sister, Christina, that introduced us while she was introducing me to her colleagues and friends. He told me that Mason was one of his closest friends and that he wanted to introduce the both of us himself. We joked about it and I told him that he could still introduce us if he wanted. He told me he was just joking and asked me to wait for him while he went to say goodbye to his friends. The party was not yet over, but he knew that I was uncomfortable, so he wanted us to get back home fast. While he was away, Mason came and asked for my phone number. I was surprised at first, but then he told me it was just so he could keep in contacts. I didn't think much about it, and so we exchanged phone numbers before I left with Samson. When we got back to the house, I couldn't help but keep thinking about what Layla had said. Even though I tried to act tough and I did not tell Samson about it, her words got to me and I became very insecure. I felt like she was right and Samson would not really marry me. I also felt like I was just wasting my time because there was every possibility that he already had plans to marry Layla. I know it was a stupid thought, but I couldn't help but think that way. I could probably sleep that night, so I decided to tell Samson what Layla had said to me. He was surprised, and he just told me to forget about it and stop acting out because something like that would not happen. Even though he assured me in a way, I still didn't feel good after I realized that he made no move to assure me that he would marry me. That really made me raise my eyebrows and start to second-guess stuff. Insecurity is a very bad thing because it makes you just overthink things and go to funny lengths to find out things that are not necessary. And it was my insecurity that led me to call Mason one day and ask him to meet me for coffee. He didn't refuse, and he even got there before me. He was actually surprised that I had contacted him and he asked me was so important. It was at that moment that I asked him if Samson had any other girlfriends that I did not know of. Mason didn't reply me at first, and he was beating around the bush and trying to code his words. That actually made me get very nervous, because I didn't understand why his closest friend could not just directly assure me or give me the right answers. I decided to refresh the question and ask him if he believed that Samson would eventually marry me. His reply was very shocking because he told me that Samson didn't seem like he was ready to settle down anytime soon. He told me that even if Samson was to settle down with anyone, he didn't believe that it would be me because he felt like something was just using me to pass away time. His words actually hurt me, and when he saw that I got offended, he told me he was sorry and that he was just saying the honest truth. I then decided to ask him why he was so sure about that, and he told me that Samson was more of the type of person who was interested in women in a more professional line of work. I thought so angry that I left the cafe and decided to go to a bar. Mason ran after me and offered to take me to the bar himself. When we got to the bar, we bought a lot of things, and I literally drunk myself to stupor. He said something that really caught my attention and made me do something so stupid. He told me that he lied me and had plans to marry me. According to him, he had eyes for me the moment he saw me at the party, and he wanted to assure me that even though his friend was not going to marry me, he would marry me. He got really flirtatious and started telling me several stories about how Samson flirts with other women at the office. He made up a lot of stories and even showed me pictures. After that, he asked me to follow him home, and I did. He made fake promises and assured me he wanted to date me. Just like the 304 I am, I foolishly slept with him. I didn't go back home the next day, and I slept with him that same day. I spent the whole day with him, which meant I spent the whole day cheating on my boyfriend, because I thought I was not in a serious relationship after all. We didn't use protection because according to Mason, there was no protection. He promised to pull out, and he did, but I'm not sure if that happened the night we were drunk. He told me he was clean, and I was also clean, so we didn't hesitate. I think I'm the world's dirtiest girl because how could I be so foolish? I'm pregnant now, but I'm sure I could have also ended up with an STD, for crying out loud. When I went back home, I convinced Samson that I just went to stay with a relative. I started avoiding him and getting very distant because I believed that he would end up leaving me anyway. I kept seeing Mason after that, and we slept together a lot. Well, I got the shock of my life when I got sick and missed my period for the following month. When I checked, I realized I was pregnant. I spoke to Mason about it, and that's when the bitter truth came out. He told me that he actually lied to me and that the pictures he showed me were old pictures of the women Samson had dated. He told me he was not ready for the child, and I should abort it because he was not interested in being a father. He called me a lose woman for not taking birth control pills. Well, I refused to take birth control pills because I believed that he would marry me at the end of the day. I didn't think it was important because he also pulled out. But I guess I'm the fool. He blocked me on all social media platforms and completely ghosted me. I needed to find the truth, so I decided to ask Christina about the dynamic between Layla and Mason. After I got rejected by Mason, I just believed that something was fishy. The fact that he told me the exact same thing Layla told me at the party was fishy. Christina told me that Layla was actually Mason's sister. Yes, Guy, they are sisters. That's when I knew that I'd been trapped. Christina asked me why I asked, and I told her Layla had been rude to me. She told me not to worry about it because Layla was just jealous because she has feelings for Samson. It finally made sense to me that Layla and Mason made a plan to get me to cheat on Samson. Mason wanted to help his sister out. I felt betrayed, and I ran home to tell Samson the truth, hoping that he would believe me. Unfortunately for me, I saw my things outside of the house. When I got inside and asked him why my things were outside, he showed me pictures of me with Mason and also a picture of the pregnancy test. Apparently, Mason had sent the pictures to Samson after I left the test at his house. Samson was very disappointed, and he cussed me out for minutes. Everything happened so fast that I thought I was in a dream. He also played the voice recording of me telling Mason I was pregnant. I explained everything to him and tried to make him understand that I was set up, but he sent me out of the house. Before he closed the door, he showed me the engagement ring he planned to use to propose to me on my birthday. I called Christina in the phone and asked her if Samson had been planning a proposal, and she was surprised that I knew of it. I begged her to tell me the truth, and she told me Samson had been planning a surprise proposal with his friends at work. He wanted to propose to me, and that's why his friends were so excited to see me. Christina didn't know about what happened yet, so I just told her to call her brother for answers. I was too ashamed to try and defend myself. I finally realized that Layla and Mason went to those extreme lengths because they knew that Samson planned to marry me, and so they had no choice than to stop low. I cried myself to sleep and almost lost my mind. I stayed on the road for almost 3 hours, homeless and clueless of where to go. Now I'm just crashing at a friend's place. I'm single, homeless, and pregnant. Update. I had to get rid of the baby because I didn't want to bring up a child I knew I couldn't provide for. I'm still crashing with someone and I'm broke. I also have asthma, so my pregnancy could have been high risk. Without enough money and stability, I would have put my life and that of the baby at stake. I also don't want a child with that beast called Mason. He didn't use protection intentionally because he wanted to give Samson a strong reason to leave me. He was sure I'd abort the baby, and I did. I can't believe there's someone as heartless and evil like him and Layla. Samson comes from a rich family and he's hardworking and has other businesses aside from being a medical laboratory scientist. So, Layla and her brother wanted to trap him to marry her so they could extract money. I called Christina and explained everything to her, even though she made it clear she wished nothing to do with me. She's the one that told Samson the real truth, and I heard he's cut all ties with Mason. He's also warned Layla to stay away from him. Well, we didn't get back together, and I know it's impossible. I broke his trust and acted desperate. He deserves better. At the end of the day, this is the worst experience of my life, and I hope to forget it one day.